Hello, hello, all those beautiful faces. How we doing? How we doing? Stephanie checking in with another episode of Class Disruption, disrupting the status quo of education. And before we get into it, you know what it is. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Hit the subscribe button, and of course, tap that bell so you can get notified every time I drop a video. Which, by the way, I have a new schedule. On Thursday nights, I'll be going live doing my new show. On Fridays, I'll be live on IG with another educator. And then also on Fridays, I'll be dropping my weekly video. So make sure you tune in, you checking out, and get involved in the conversation. And I'm having one of those conversations, one of those hard conversations, one of those important conversations right here, right now, in this episode with 10-year veteran educator and founder of Thrival Indie in Indianapolis, Indiana, India Huey. And now I don't want to take up too much of your time. I just want to get right into this conversation, but I do want to give you some context. India and I connected over Twitter. I'm always checking out her tweets. Many of them resonate very deeply with me, including this one right here that started this conversation, Performative Allyship, and its dangers and how it is gonna get you, in all sorts of trouble if you tweeting it out and you not really putting in the work. And I think in many ways this is tied up in an issue with social media in general. I mean, what is it other than me posting this thing to show you how awesome I am? And we're all kind of riding that line between, being a little boastful, like, oh, look at what I'm doing, performance like, and being genuine and real. And we really, really have to be consciously aware of this so we can maintain an authentic presence on social media as we move through the world. However, that's become even more of an issue with this Black Lives Matter movement because a lot of people, a lot of companies and corporations are just throwing out there Black Lives Matter, but aren't necessarily doing the actions to back it up. And so let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into this conversation. India Huey, y'all. Hey, and we are live. What's going on, India?
Hey.
I want to say thank you for setting us up with this live stream, and then we're going to have the recording for later. So this is fun. I always like trying something new. Connecting via technology, Twitter. Yeah. I like your tweets. So, but before we get into the tweets, even me. I want to know more about what you do, who you are, what you're all about. So let the people know.
All right. So, it's funny because I know this is going to go on your thing later, but a lot of the people, since we're watching on mine, they know about me. So after I tell you about me and your people about me, then you have to tell yourself about you. You have to tell my people about you. All right. So, I think you might have froze a little bit. There you go. All right.
So I was going to say, all right, you're going to have to do that again.
So yeah, after I tell your people about me, then you're going to tell my people about you.
All right, so, definitely.
I'm India Huey. I just finished my 10th year in education.
Woo! So that's a big year. Congratulations.
Right. That means I'm grown is what I think. So but yeah, I've been an educator for 10 years. I'm married to an educator who also just finished her 10th year. And I founded Thrival Indie Academy, which is this humanities study abroad school where we are just raising these social justice warriors who are globally minded. And it's a public school here in Indianapolis with Indianapolis Public Schools, and it's free for our students, and we cover all their expenses and all that good stuff. And it's just all around bringing access and equity to study abroad. But then now it's bigger than that. It's not just about bringing access and equity to study abroad. It's about bringing access and equity to quality and high quality education for all kids, and particularly the kids who haven't had access to it over millennia.
Wow, that's awesome. And this is high school, right? We're talking study abroad in high school?
Yep, study abroad in high school. Yeah.
That's amazing. What's one of the places you guys went to recently?
So
before, obviously pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, yeah. So the first place where we went was the first 2 years, it was 11th grade only, and the teachers and I and the students all lived and learned in Thailand for 3 months. So that was January through March, through all of March. We did that for 2 years. And now moving forward, it'll be Costa Rica for a week in 10th grade, and then the Dominican Republic for 3 months in 11th grade.
Wow, that's awesome. And it's like, like the week experience is nice, but when you said 3 months, I was like, that's awesome because you really have that opportunity to like get immersed in there. You're not just like stopping by like
Mhm.
touristy. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. I definitely have to like look into that, learn more about that. Because I mean, study abroad in high school, you hear about like that one kid who like does it over the summer, but that's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's like, and is it like is it a coincidence that your name is India, you live in Indianapolis, like your school is called Thrive with India, or is it just like, what is
Look,
that?
okay, so I actually changed the name of the school this year because it was Thrival Academy Indy. And so we had some changes organizationally. So I changed the name so when people Google it, they're Googling Thrival Indy. It took me months to realize that my name was in the middle of the school. I
Ah!
said it because one day somebody had said on accident, I was in a meeting and they said Thrival India. And I was like, what? And it was like, oh my gosh, like, oops. And then I asked somebody, I was like, did you know I did that? Like, I did not know. And they're like, we thought you did it on purpose. I'm like, what kind of narcissist I would do? I did not do that on purpose. So that is absolutely a coincidence. But the first year when the kids would act up, I would be like, this is Thrival India, just like messing with them. But I didn't. So yeah, that's a coincidence. It also is a coincidence that we live in Indianapolis because I wasn't born here. I'm an Army kid, so I was born in Kentucky. I've been here since I was 4, but girl, whenever I travel, people always be like, "Oh, what's your name? India. Where are you from? Indianapolis. Where's that? Indiana." And they just, it's just such a joke to them. They're like, "Oh, that's India from Indiana." I'm like, I've never heard that one before. Then the first we went to the DR for our honeymoon. This like they were just like cracking up. I'm like, what is it? And they're like, India. They're explaining that like some people refer to like the color of my skin, like this specific
Mm,
brown skin as
yeah.
India. So then they're like, you're India from Indianapolis.
Oh.
So yeah, I'm used to
All
it.
right, all right. I like that name though. It's a beautiful name. And I've never been to Indianapolis, but I do have some family that's from Indiana. So I've been up that way a little bit.
Right. We'll come visit
Um,
sometime.
yeah, I know. Once it's all over, I mean, this summer I'm even thinking plotting. So where I'm trying to go, and if I can align it with some dope people in my network, I think that's even better.
Yeah.
So you want to know about me?
Yes, before we get into this, because you slid into my DMs about this ally, because you see that I'm be going in on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm interested to know like how you even found me, and then yeah, tell us about you.
I'm not exactly sure how I found you. I was probably just like a lot of times I'll just like follow people. Like, how Twitter does, like they'll put retweets or like things that other people
Mhm.
like and stuff in your feed. And so I just try to like broaden my network. I'm always seeking out like opinions from all across the spectrum. It's always fun to like agree with somebody, but I think it's way more exciting to find people who you don't always necessarily align with. Or I think even more interesting is when you have some ideas that are the same and some that you express differently, and you
Mhm.
could kind of get into those and like parse those nuances, and hopefully come out actually finding more common ground. So yeah, just following that down the Twitter rabbit hole. And I was excited when you followed me back. I was like, oh, she followed me back. I think it was like after I like liked or commented on one of your tweets.
Mhm.
And then yeah, I mean, Twitter is one of those things that it's like I put it down the last couple days. I went back and more to IG. I like kind of
Mhm.
switch back and forth. Um, but I'm out in New York City. I teach in the Bronx, and I live outside in Connecticut. Like I've always been in and out of the city. When I was a kid, like we would like ditch school sometimes, go out to the city, like ride our skateboards up and down. Um, and when I was getting into education originally, to be a teacher, originally I was like, well, I want to, teach where I live and this and that. But then I was like, also, when you're a kid, you're like, oh, I don't really want to like live at home. I want to like go off on my own. I want to,
Mm-hmm.
do something different. And I was riding on one of the subway trains in New York City, and I saw an advertisement for a teaching program. And I was like, you know what? I'm already accepted in a teaching program in Connecticut, but nah, I'm gonna go move out to the city. I'm gonna kind of like carve my own path, carve my own way. All the reasons that I wanted to get into education in Stanford are applicable in the city. Stanford is a very mixed, diverse place to come up. Actually, I think the demographics of our town actually reflect almost perfectly the demographics of the country as a whole.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and like growing up, my town was going through a lot of like the kind of like issues that are now more broadly reflected in school systems across America. So we're having like all these redistricting meetings
Mm-hmm.
and like socioeconomic status and race. And I mean, where I went to public school, I just assumed that's how it was. Like I didn't really know about this whole world out there. I just thought that like, there's I was always one of the only white kids in my school, and I just thought that's how it was. And then we got bussed up to the other side of town. I was like, oh, there's like all these other kids, and apparently they're smarter than us because they got in the high groups and we're all like in the lower groups.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just interesting to see like how the dynamics played out. And then of course being white, like how people want to draw lines around you. And I often would get, put in a different group than the people who I grew up with and who I saw as my friends just because of the way that other people saw me. So it's just an interesting mix of dynamics, and they're really coming to a head. I think right now the whole world is kind of galvanized by these issues, and I mean it's exciting and it's interesting, and I think too like the language is very interesting
There we
because I
go.
just always find myself I have the same goals as people, but we kind of express ourselves maybe in some different language. And then that ends up just like, we don't even want to get into conversation with each other. So I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
to break down those barriers, just like get into interesting conversations with people and not be like, oh, you said that. Like, so the conversation is shut down.
Yeah.
And that's really what I try to do with my students as well. Just have, like students say outrageous things sometimes, and I think they want you to shut them down. They don't
Yep.
want to have that conversation. But when you invite them in, you're like, oh, you want to be a stripper. Okay, so let's talk about that. Like, what are the things that you need in order to be successful in that career path? And then they're like, what, miss? Like, what are you talking about?
Right,
I'm
they're
like,
like,
well,
what? You're not supposed to even like what I just said. It's like, but you said it for attention.
exactly. And yeah, so just trying to immerse myself in as much as I can in the community and the people that I feel like I've always been a part of.
Mm.
So
Okay.
so yeah,
I mean,
context,
I'm
right?
really excited. I read your questions. Like I looked over them. Sometimes I like people
Mhm.
just lob questions at me. Like I'm a verbal processor, so I just think on my toes. But I
Okay.
was looking at your questions and I didn't think too much about them, but I was like, oh, these are some good questions. So I'm really excited. So I hope we can have some good conversation about this. I have many a thought about a lot of the things that you actually asked me.
All right, cool. So I guess we can just start with, since we now have context of who we are as people, just like more context for people who watch this recording maybe down the line about, what's going on in the world at this moment.
Mhm.
So, as we know over the past several weeks, there's been issues that have brought, race to that's ever looming presence, but really into sharp focus. There was the Ahmaud Arbery murder, where two like vigilante white men, and apparently they actually now have like solid proof that it could have been racially motivated by some comments that were made by one of the men after he shot him.
Mm.
And then there was like the Amy Cooper incident in
Mhm.
Central Park, where she played on like that classic trope of like, oh no, like I'm a white woman and there's an African American man, like no other descriptors. And then that same day, actually, which I think is an interesting juxtaposition, where you have the white woman calls on a black man, and then another side of the country, a black man is murdered by cops who are
Mhm.
pressing his neck and chest. And now we have Black Lives Matter. I mean, it's been a movement since 2014, but it's all 50 states. I mean, they're still going even today. What is it? 2 weeks almost later.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, hopefully this renewed effort to really see like race reform, both like socially and legally, is, going to see some follow through. So, just like from your perspective, what are we witnessing right now? And you can talk about it like generally and then bring it down into education.
Mm. So, I mean, it's like that's a good question. Like, what are we witnessing? It's just like I don't know if there's a good answer because
Mm,
I think we're witnessing a lot of things. Like, I think there's this. It's come to a head. I think where I'm witnessing. I can tell you what I'm witnessing. I don't know what we're witnessing, but I am witnessing a whole lot more white people like finally accept that something's wrong. A whole lot more white people are acknowledging like they do have inherent privilege just by being white, and that there are Black people who they care about who are on the losing end of their privilege. And for me, I'm witnessing more white people finally step up and say, like, okay, I am willing to acknowledge like things that might be painful for me or things that are in my history or my family's history that have got to change. And then on the other side, like on the Black side, I am witnessing more Black people who are less afraid of losing their jobs for saying what needs to be said. So it's not like these things, like I don't know of many Black people who are just now awakening to what's happening, but I do know that I'm surrounded by Black people and brown people who are like, I am no longer going to code switch and in the most dangerous way where I pretend that nothing that is happening in this world is impacting me and my ability to function at my job. Because the reality is it impacts every aspect of me, including my ability to function at my job. And that should not be something that I am ashamed of. They are willing to call out the bias in their own jobs, the privilege of their own bosses, the racism in their own systems that they work within without fear of being of consequence, of people reacting to that, of these racists who are running these systems, who are operating these businesses and these corporations saying, how dare you call out my racism? Now you're going to lose your job. So I don't think too many people on the Black side are waking up to this, but I do feel like everybody's waking up to saying like, I do not care about this boss and this boss's feelings. Like, I'm going to say what needs to be said, because as long as we don't say it, no change will happen. And then we're also witnessing, like people have time. I've seen a lot of, Black people say that I got time today when we're about to go off on you. But we literally have time because we're all at home. Either people don't have jobs or they're working from home. We don't have parties or concerts or dinners or baby showers or anything to go to. So all we have is time to let y'all know what's up. So like we're witnessing people with time. And then pain, and then we're witnessing young people who have not been in class for the past 3 months, who've been oppressed in these super oppressive education systems and these super oppressive schools, where these young people have been taught that they're not allowed to speak until some person, particularly a white person, gives them permission to do so. So since they've been out of that system for the past 3 months, they forgot that they weren't supposed to speak. They forgot how oppressed they were, and they're speaking up.
Okay.
And I'm here for it. We got time. So I think that's what we're witnessing.
Okay. I didn't think about the being like quarantined from that perspective in terms of having time. I definitely feel like there's like a built up, we've all been inside, and so this is definitely one expression of like, like at last, like and I think it is definitely interesting how there's an overlap in some of the economic disparities that we've seen as a result of this pandemic, right? Like, what did they give the corporations? Literally like uncapped trillions of dollars, just like straight to the Fed. What do you need? And then and nobody wants to talk about that in the same terms that they want to talk about like, oh my God, like all this looting and that, you know, like, and I'm not going to sit
Right.
here and try to like, say like looting is great and we should have it. But I think that we need, instead of being like, oh, these looters are bad, we need to have that conversation where we're actually comparing like, okay, what is the looting that just took place and like what's happening now? And like, why do these people feel like they should risk, like, because it is still a risk, like to go out there and be taking things from stores, like basically risking everything to go and take stuff. And we hold it so valuable in this society. So I think that there's a lot of interesting questions, and they're just not being asked.
Yeah, my aunt said, when we're in New York, I need to get up with you.
Most definitely, most def.
I just had to go and turn on. Like, I realized I couldn't see anybody's comments because I didn't have it public, so now it's public. So, don't want anybody to be mad that I missed your comments. But you're right. It, like, people are so worried about property. You know what I mean? Like, but it's the same thing when human bodies were property. You know, like there was a time when a black body was property. And so like you had people who would be worried about going and get us. If I ran away, you worried about going and get me and bringing me back because I'm your property. But you're not worried about making sure that I have livelihood. You don't care about that. And so then you're just seeing that again with this, like you don't care about any of our bodies. You just care about like making sure this property. You're so worried about the looting of innocent people's like businesses and property.
Right. So, and I mean, it is, I mean, my school is in the Bronx and then our neighborhood was destroyed.
Really?
You know, and a lot of businesses and like a lot on our kids like saw very up close, you know, because it came to a lot of their neighborhoods too. Mm-hmm. And it is devastating. I mean, the thing is that a lot of those businesses, it's not a Target, you know, it's not a corporation, it's immigrant families, it's, you know, Black and brown families who own these businesses who, you know, may or may not have insurance. I mean, the city has stepped up. A lot of organizations, I just posted to my Instagram page today about organizations that are helping provide, funny enough, is like PPP relief. What do they call it? It's not the Paycheck Protection Program. It was like I forget, but they were playing off that PPP. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely two sides to it. And I don't think, I'm not going to sit out here and say like, oh yes, the looting is good. But again, it's a valid point to bring up this question of property and people's bodies. And it really does go back to a lot of those ideas about life, liberty, property. And I think that we need, you know, I'm a social studies teacher. I don't teach US history, but I'm definitely and every year I've made my curriculum more reflective of, you know, the things that my students are interested, the things that I'm interested in. And, you know, because when at first, like, you just kind of have to like teach, right? You just have to, you got to teach. Like, you can't just be like, oh, I'm figuring this out. Like, you know, maybe we'll get but now all 4 years, every single year, I've definitely made shifts in taking more ownership of the curriculum and making it more reflective of the things that my students are interested in and relevant to what we're trying to learn today. Oh man, I would love to dig into that topic specifically. But now that we have some context though, because I really want to get into the thing that made me reach out to you and I was like, yo, we got to talk about this, which was your tweet about performative allyship. And you said, performative allyship will get you dragged on social media. Tread lightly and read the room. And I feel like I've been seeing a lot of performance, or, you know, the other term, it's a little bit overused, but I still like it, is like virtue signaling. Mm-hmm. And so let's just start with, first of all, like, what is allyship? What is the role of allies? What are some things that you can do to like be a good ally?
Okay, so one, I was triggered to send that tweet because Leah Michelle from Glee was like, hashtag Black Lives Matter. And then immediately, like, when you say dragged, like, by her toenails, they were like, girl, you were awful. You were, you know, like, you may not have ever called anybody the N-word, but the way you treated people, you called us roaches. And like, I mean, she just treated people so poorly as this diva. singer and television star. And it just made me think of every educator, honestly, who I see do that. Every school leader, superintendent, board member who's on here talking about diversity or whatever. It's like, you have actively positioned, you've taken positions on things that, like do harm to communities. And so like social media is not like a hashtag ain't gonna get the job done. And now, like I said before, Black people and brown people are not afraid to call it out. Like we know that we are needed in the workforce. So, like even if you fire me, I'm gonna be able to get a job somewhere else. So you are not allowed to say, like your little post or your tweet and then continue to do harmful things. What happened with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook? So that's where it's just like I have this feeling of like I don't want to see any more of these tweets or any more of these Instagram posts. I can't really, I always say like I'm Black, I've been Black for as long as I've been in this body, like who knows what, but I think all of my lives, every time my soul reaches a body, it's been a Black body because like the energy I feel just keep getting stronger. So I don't know. But I have no idea in this consciousness what it's like to be anything other than Black. So I don't know how to tell a white person how to be like a good white person. Because I've never been one. I've never been a good or a bad white person. But when I work with my teachers, one thing that I say is like, I've had teachers who are non-Black who are able to say, like we get to a point, it's not something they're able to do in the beginning, but we get to a point where they're like, oh my gosh, I did or did not do this thing because these students are Black. I did not call on this student because I assumed she would have an attitude with me, and by doing so, I robbed her of an opportunity of learning. That's an ally. That's an ally to me because we all have bias. We all have prejudice. Like we all were raised in this country under this, under a cloud of racism. So we all own it. And if you cannot identify it in yourself, name it, call it out, and change it, you ain't no ally. So any white person who says to me, like, I don't see color, trash. I don't have any bias in me, trash. Like I've never had a racist thought, trash, because that's not true. We've had them. Like I, as a Black person, like there've been moments when if I see Black people outside of a hotel and I think I thought it was gonna be a nice hotel, and I'm Black, it ain't been nothing but Black, and I have that thought, and my Black behind is going to stay at that hotel. So if I can acknowledge that I have bias and I've learned this bias and unpack it, then everybody should be able to do it. So I think like that's just very important of an ally. I don't trust any person who tells me that they've never had a bias or racist thought. They've never had any, I don't care how raised around Black people you were. I don't care how many biracial kids or Black people you've dated. Even my wife has had to acknowledge like some of her own bias and unpack it and talk through it. So like there is no concept of, like I don't see color or I don't have any racist inclinations because it is something that we were born to have. I mean, we were born to have, but something that we were raised to have because we were born and raised here in this country where, this is what we learn. So yeah, like I can go off on a diatribe about that, but I'll let you.
I have a question. Yeah, now I have a question about some of those things like that you said. I guess the one that really sticks out to me because it's one of the most yes, preach, is the I don't see color. One, I think that's a popular one. But I also think that sometimes like it's a semantic thing, right? So if we were to unpack like the I don't see color, I mean, would you have a conversation with somebody if they said that?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm in a place where I've been doing this. So like what you're seeing from me, what they're hearing from me, everybody who knows me knows I've been doing this for like coming up on a decade. So I'm in a place now where I'm no longer interested in educating white people about their racism. I believe that's the job of white allies to do. But I am in a place where I will have conversations with and help white allies unpack some of their, some of the things that they're still holding them back to like reaching this like ultimate allyship.
Because what I hear, so when I hear somebody say, well, or reject the notion of like, I don't see color, it's because you have to see somebody's color and like their full identity to like truly understand who their character of their person is, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't see color. When people say I don't see color, that means like they're basically saying like I see us all as white. You know, like if you don't see color, there has to be a default. You know, and so then the mentality is like the default is white. I see everybody just like me. So then when you don't, one, that's a lie. You know, like I just don't even think it's possible to not see it. We see it. Even people who are like literally colorblind, there are voice triggers, there are facial feature triggers, there's trigger in
Right.
our hair. So like even if you don't see the actual color of my skin, you know that I am Black, you know that I am a Latina, you know, like there are just things that you'll be able to see. Like I'm not specifically, but you know, I'm speaking generally, you know, like there are triggers
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you will be able to hear in your dialect or, you know, just other phenotypes where they'll know what race you are. So I think number one, it's a lie to say that. It's just like when people say, I don't care if you're purple, green, blue, there are no purple, green, and blue people. So again, like this is not coming from truth. You know, it's not coming from a place of truth. You're just giving me these maxims, you're giving me these platitudes that actually have no value, no depth to them.
So what if, I mean, and again, I'm just trying to think that when somebody says that I don't see color, oftentimes I think that they do kind of mean those things. You know, they mean that I want to judge you for like individually, for like who you are, for all the beauty that you bring with, you know, your race, your heritage, your ethnicity, your experiences. Um, you know, and I just like, I hate to see us get caught up on the semantics of, and again, I don't want to trivialize it as necessarily a semantic issue, but these are like the conversations where I want to have, where I want to unpack, okay, well, when I say I don't see color, like this is what I mean, and when you reject the use of that term, this is what you mean.
Yeah.
But what are we both trying to say that's the same?
So
uh,
I don't know if I've ever had someone say to me, I don't see color, who I didn't already assume had some bias or racism in them. You know, like that's not, you know, I mean, you can give me an example maybe of a time you've said it and you weren't being accused of something, but usually when people tell a person of color they don't color, it's in direct response to that person of color telling them that they feel that they have been a victim of that person's bias, whether implicit or explicit, or their racism, whether overt or covert. You know, like
yeah.
I don't know of a time where a white person has said to me, I don't see color. And it was just a conversation about, you know, how we love each other and how they're such
Hmm.
an ally to me and the people.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're at it. I think because we're at this new point in history, so we have to like redefine terms and come up with a new like language of expressing ourselves. And then, you know, because we're so divided in these like strict political terms, they automatically become so politicized, right? Because there's like the Black Lives Matter, then it's like no, all lives matter. And instead of like unpacking what do we mean by that, we just like initially go, well, that means that you're a Republican or, you know, a conservative,
Mhm.
and that means you're a Democrat, you're a liberal, you're this and that. So I mean, I personally, I don't, if somebody says like don't use the phrase like I don't see color, then I'm like, cool, like okay, so like how do we want to come to terms and express these ultimately what I think are like pretty similar ideas and in a
Mhm.
common language.
So I think the
I'm
other
reading,
thing, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna
The
say I'm reading the book right now, How to Be an Anti-Racist. I'm actually
mhm.
listening to it. Because I went to a virtual event yesterday, and Kendi was supposed to be there, but like the audio and video kind of got messed up. And I mean, I've read a lot about the book and what other people had to say. So I was like, you know what? I just got to read this book myself. And I once he unpacks a lot of his ideas behind like the terms that people throw around, like anti-racist and this and that, I'm actually like, you know what? Like, I think I agree with you a lot more than any like critique that I would have. And I feel like the critiques that I have are more along like a philosophical, like scholarly academic way than any actual um a way that would be applicable in like concrete daily life
Right.
that most people understand and apply the terms.
And I think that is part of the problem. Like, as allies don't have any place to tell us how we should feel, or, like, that's just not the place of an ally to say, well, this, when we say this, we really mean this. Okay, well, I'm telling you how it makes me feel, so don't say it. And if it's not just this one person, but collectively we're saying, like, all of the scholars, all of the OGs, like, if everybody's on the same page, quit telling me you don't see color because this is the way it makes us feel. And as an ally is like, this is the way it makes them feel. It's out of my, it's out of my lexicon, and I'm going to tell every other white person to quit saying it too. And that should be the end of that story. It comes from a place of privilege to say, well, this is what is meant by it, and this is okay. I hear you, and it still is hurtful to our community. And I think the most hurtful thing or disappointing thing about it is, let's see, Jessica says, the issue is if you have to say there's a problem, it should be shown in your actions, but you quote unquote don't see color, right? And that's what I was about to get to.
That really connects to performative allyship.
Right. And what I was gonna get to is, like, I need you to see color, because there are, there is no, I see us as all the same. We're not all the same, and there are systems in place to keep some of us down. There are systems in place to, like, keep certain bodies in prison, to keep certain bodies underpaid and in certain houses. And if you don't see color, then you do not have any fire under you to go out and advocate on behalf of me, because this is something that is impacting a specific community of people of this color, so I need you to see it so that you can say, yes, this is a systems issue. People who don't see color don't see it as a systems issue. They see it as a person by person issue, and they see racism as you calling me the N-word. They don't see racism as, disproportionate suspension rates, or, lack of resources here and abundance of resources there. They don't see it as, if you and I get arrested for the same thing, I'm probably going to do a whole lot more time than you would do. They don't see it as a systems issue, and that is the problem with I don't see color.
Okay. Yeah. And that's actually the exact part where I am right now in the book. I think it's like chapter 4 or 5, where it talks about, if you don't see color, then you can't see the systems which use color to separate and disperse people in particular ways. And two, that brings me back to where I don't want to lose focus in this moment. I feel like, white people in particular feel like, in a certain way, like they're being called out, like, you're racist, like the things that you do are racist, when we don't have this understanding of the term. Like, racist is not an individual characteristic necessarily. It's pointing to the greater system of things. And I think that we need to bring more clarity around that. And I think that the media, at first, of course, we need to see things, but they're playing to this internal kind of like divide and conquer between these people, when we're all impacted by this system. But, obviously the good and the bad impacts are disproportionately on particular groups of people. And I just don't want that to get lost. My video that I put up on YouTube, at the end, I put in a Malcolm X clip where he talks about, like, the white liberal and how they can be conservative, they can be Republican, or they can be Democrat. But really, they're just trying to form their, it's a power play. And that's also why I'm super hesitant when, and somewhat, disappointed when all of these big brands and, like, these big people are like, Black Lives Matter, this and that. But at the same time, like, if they don't say Black Lives Matter, if they don't, there's all these posts about silence is violence, or like, if you don't say something, I'm taking note and I'm going to delete you. Like, then there's like the dear white people, or like dear white teacher posts. And then sometimes they do give like conflicting advice. Like, I've seen ones be like, reach out to your Black friends. And then other ones are like, don't reach out to your Black friends.
That's what I said.
Or like, and I'm just like, or like, you know, white people need to do the work, but like don't center it on your whiteness. And I think a lot of these things can be somewhat like overwhelming. Even, you know, I feel like I've been like authentically in this space, like doing the work, and now I'm like I don't want to be performing. I don't want to be, you know, but like so it is kind of hard to know how to do your thing, I guess.
But you
Like
know what? You know the
how
beautiful
to
thing
show it
about
on social media or not.
the conundrum that you have, the beautiful thing about it is that none of that could possibly get you killed. The conundrums that you have are about like you feeling like you're doing the best job of being an ally and showing that you're a good person. The conundrums that we have on a minute by minute, day to day basis are the difference between life and death to us. So I'm also not in a place where I really care that it's like difficult for white people to navigate allyship or like what it means to be a good person, because we've been for 30 years I've been trying to navigate what it means to be a safe enough Black person, what it means to be a professional enough Black person, what it means to be, you know, an appropriate enough Black person. All of those things I teeter on the line of, can I keep my job or not? Will this police officer let me go or not? Will this person let me out of the store or not? So I would say, like, you know, I love telling white people check their privilege, but like that is a moment, like, you know, like acknowledge and appreciate the privilege that you have to where like the conundrum that you're going through is like, oh man, like how do I express to the Black people I care about that I care about them? Like, you know, like what a blessing, because that's not what we're going through on this end. On this end, it's how do I express that I am not a direct threat to them? So please don't kill me. But when it comes to, let's see, Penny says racism does show up as an individual consciously hating, and it also is systemic and culturally insidious disease. Yeah, so I mean, well, the way I approach racism is more along the lines of systems. And then I tell people like, your personal hate is like bias. But if I am in the position to be an employer and my hate keeps me from employing another person, that's not bias. That is definitely racism. So, you know, this power thing. Yeah. But I did tell white people, don't check on me, like, because, you know, like, what does that do? I just think that's secret. You know, like if you're sending a message, like if you're sending a DM to your Black friends or sending a text message, thinking of you, you know, like that's not the act that I really want from you. That's not what I desire of you. There may be some Black people and that's the act that they desire of them. That ain't what I want. You know, like I don't really care if you're thinking of me. I want you to be thinking of your racist uncle. I want you to be thinking of your mom. I want you to be thinking of your cousins, because they're the ones who are electing people who are, you know, harmful to our lives. They're the ones perpetuating these hateful stereotypes of us. Your thoughts that you're sending to me secretly in this DM are not going to save my life, the life of the people I care about. So I don't want that. It's not like I'll say you're racist if you did it, you know, like I won't think that any white person who has ever slid into a DM or texted me or anything saying like, I just want you to know I care, I don't think they're a bad person. I do think that they're a weenie. You know, like I think that you're scared to address your family, and you're scared to even post that publicly. Tag me to it. You know, like Adam or Dap'em. That's what you used to say back in the day. Like, say, I need you to say it publicly that you are thinking of me, and not that you're thinking of me, that you care for my life and the lives of people who look like me, and you stand behind the things that I say and the struggle that I'm working toward. I don't want no, I don't want no secret message from anybody. So I think that is the sentiment when I say don't check on me. That is what I mean. Please love me. You know, like if you're messaging me and you're making videos, if you're messaging me and you're calling out your boss, if you're messaging me and you're having very uncomfortable conversations with your racist family members, please message me. If you're not doing the latter, I'm cool off of the former.
See, yeah, I think that was actually going to kind of be my follow-up, because for me, you know, and I know that this is totally a different thing, but like when I think of like when people like say happy birthday or whatever, like I don't want you to like go on my page, like my Facebook, and everybody like leaves a comment under your thing. Like, you know, I would rather them like DM me directly. Like, if you really know me, like I want that real love. Like, I don't want that fake love. I want that real love. So that's what I was going to say. Like, what if somebody is like doing that public thing, but then they also like feel like they want to reach out to you specifically? Because I kind of feel like that's how I move through the world is I don't want to perform for people. Like, I want it to be authentic. I don't want to just put something out there and like tag you and just be like, oh, I was thinking of you and like these million other people also.
Right.
I want it to be personal. So I just like that, I guess, validation of my approach. I don't know. And then it's like, am I making it about my whiteness? Like this and that.
Absolutely,
so
you are. But you know, like that's
I
a
know.
that's a natural thing to do. You know, like it is. Everything is centered on whiteness. Let me tell you this. I when I taught middle school, I taught reading, and I had a class, like my students were like 95% black. I have like one white kid in every class. If I had a white kid at all. And I would do like these, like on this day, every day we would start with like their, like do now would be this on this day thing. And it was always something in Black history. And every once in a while I would ask myself, like, how do these 3 white kids who I have out of the 100+ students I have, how will they feel about this particular, 3-minute lesson that I'm doing? And that is how we have been raised, to center whiteness to the point that I will do something that is to the detriment of the majority of the students I have in order to make sure that white people feel safe. I am past that, and so many other Black and brown people are past that. Like, we are no longer caring if you feel safe, because it is about our safety. It's about you, and your feeling safe and okay, or not feeling comfortable is not a matter of life and death, So it is okay for you to be uncomfortable, because if you're uncomfortable, that means you're ready to grow, and you are growing. And that just means like things are happening for us. And the conversation is actually centering us now after 400 years of it centering white people. Girl, I'm telling you, I can go and go and go. And I mean, my wife is like outside because she hears this all the time. So now she's like,
I need a break. All right. No, I guess so. Again, privilege says I can choose to be public or not. We can't choose your preference of being private. It's okay. Right. And I think that I'm definitely, understanding that aspect, but it's like, then where's that line of performance? I guess that's what I was trying to delineate between, was like, oh, I'm just doing this because everybody wants me to be public about it,
Yeah.
And I guess if you don't have the actions to back it up, that's when it's performance. But if you're like out here like authentically trying to understand and listen and do it, then you shouldn't be worried about performing.
Exactly. Yes. If you make a post and you are worried that people can scroll back through some of your other things that you said, or you're worried that somebody can come out and say, like, screenshot something that you put send in a text, or they can talk about a personal experience they've had with you recently, that is performative, because there's no action behind it. But right. If you make a post like that and you know that all the people around this is exactly what you stand for, and this is what, and people grow and change. Like, I had some opinions about a lot of things that I've grown and changed from. So I don't really even believe in digging through somebody's like 15-year social media history. But if last week you were saying some real messed up stuff or treating people really poorly, but you make this post today, that is absolutely performative. Or if today you are still underpaying your employees and not paying them living wages, and you make a post today about how Black Lives Matter, that is extremely performative. Walmart. Go ahead.
Oh, yes. Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is I mean, I'm very like against like these big corporations. Like, I'm all about like, let's do it local, let's support local businesses. And if you support local businesses, you're much more likely to support immigrants, Black and brown people. I think actually that one of the quickest growing entrepreneurial groups is Black women. Mm-hmm. I forget what the statistic is that I read, but that was definitely I'm pretty sure you guys were the biggest growing group. So that's awesome.
We are. And we're actually reading a book right now called The Memo. And melanated leaders.
Hey.
My group, we're leading this book study, and that was one of the statistics that we talked about last week. But the problem is that Black women, although we are we are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs, we also are only averaging $40,000 a year as entrepreneurs. So
Right. Yeah. Lowest VC. But there are more and more companies are becoming aware of that fact. I know in New York City, I forget his name, John something. He has a venture capital group, and like that's specifically who they
mhm.
support. Is women of color, and then after that, it would be people of color and immigrant businesses. So I think that, and this kind of like brings us to the next question that I wanted to ask you about was, I mean, you could kind of hate on the whole, like, you got to capitalize on a crisis, but at the same time, like, if you're authentically moving yourself through a space and there is a particular urgency on an issue that you care about, you have to, galvanize that moment and capitalize on it. So what are some of the, like, the longer term impacts that you see of this, and what are some of the things that you've been doing at your school or you've wanted to do at your school that you're going to use this momentum to achieve?
So yeah, it's funny that you asked that, because that actually is something that I was like on the phone having a moment about. Like, I do not want to feel like I'm capitalizing off of like the pain of like my community. And then here, like, and it's made national news, but a young man named Drejon Reed was gunned down
Mm.
on Facebook Live in this city by the police. And his mom just recently came out saying they shot his eye. He had beautiful eyes, shot his eyes out, once he was down. So there's a lot of pain specifically in Indianapolis right now, as well as across the world. But there are things that like I had already put in place, because this pain is nothing new.
Mhm.
So like wellness, like mental wellness was something that was already very important to us because of the trauma that our community experiences. And now it's like I have to communicate that better, that like to the community, that my school is a school that really cares about mental wellness, and it's something that we are investing in, so that people know that this is a school they could trust to educate their whole child and make their child
Mm.
whole. Um, so that's one thing. Another thing is like our curriculum has always definitely been one that empowers our students to be like
Mhm.
these advocates, these activists. And so we have like ethnic studies, and one of our units for ethnic studies is the history and culture of African American people. And our students study like race riots that have happened
Mhm.
over history and the events that led up to them, and then what occurred after. And we did not know that we would be in the midst of one, as this, like we didn't know when we wrote this. So that's something that is like extremely timely, that is my responsibility to make sure the community knows, like, this is something that we're educating, not that we're advocating race riots, but that
Mhm.
we're educating our students on these are the events that led up to them in the past and actually led up to them now, and then this is what happened after. So does that mean it was effective or not? And so then we can really
Mhm.
understand, and then what are alternative methods to get it if we haven't gotten it so far. And that's the same thing with our civic engagement course, like and these are all ninth grade courses. Our civic engagement course is all about our students like really understanding what is local leadership politically from a nonprofit perspective, and then like how do we make sure that we're holding people of our community accountable. If they're saying that this is their mission, then looking at their mission and saying like, are y'all doing this? Like, is this what you're actually doing in the community? So we're teaching our kids to like speak on behalf. Oh, Amanda, yeah, we definitely did. We'll definitely tell you more about
Yeah.
it. Yes. I'll message you. So those are things that it's like, I don't think there's anything that I really am changing based on this moment, because like I was already in this space. Like I've been just out here like a renegade. But I do need to communicate it more effectively to the community, to the city, so they know what we're doing, and that they can trust us to advance the community forward.
Awesome. I like that. I like I do. I think how you deliver your message and like the words that you choose, it's so important. And sometimes that means, I think in this case, especially for me, for other white people, it means understanding the language of Black people and what you're saying and unpacking what that means and then saying, okay, now how can I apply this? So I know at my school we do meditation for it's one of the programs that my principal brought into our school like
Mm,
6 years ago now. And I love it. I mean, I love it for
mm.
me. I love it for the kids. And I think that it's a shame that we have to like squeeze it in. Like
Right.
they literally took like 5 minutes. How they did it was they took 5 minutes from every class period. So we went from 50-minute periods to 45-minute periods. And then we have two 18-minute periods now that we pause during our day and do meditation.
I love
Um,
it.
what are some of the programs that you would want to bring in to address that trauma and to bring, mental health awareness and strategies and tools to your students?
Oh yeah, so we have what's called Wellness Wednesdays.
Mm,
So my good friend Charlie Red, she owns a studio here, black owned, black queer owned studio, Haven Yoga Studio, and it was specifically because yoga is not always welcoming to Black people.
mhm.
It's not a very welcoming space for Black people,
You're
and
not a
so
yoga mom, yoga soccer mom?
right. So she opened that studio to specifically have, like create a safe space for people of color and queer folk to be able to practice. And so she's coming in every Wednesday for 40 minutes of yoga with our students and our teachers. So our in their advisory group, and we have small class sizes. So
Awesome.
15 students and their teacher every Wednesday will go through this practice together. And it's based on Emory University's social emotional ethical learning framework. So
Mhm.
it's really about like self-compassion, compassion of others, self-regulation, just all of those things. And so we have that. So the first half of the day is dedicated to wellness. So you have 40 minutes of the yoga, and then we have self-directed learning time where our students actually get to do like that's where you do that like personalized things. So whatever your teacher assigned for you specifically, whether it be to take a test over or a diagnostic or to try to remaster something, they work on that on their own, so they could just have their earbuds in and be in silence and
Mm,
working on their own. And while they're doing that, their advisors are meeting with them every week, one-on-one. And these meetings aren't just like, this is what your grades are, this is what your behavior look like, but it's like, how's your grandma doing? Like, how are you feeling about the move? What goals have you set, like long-term goals, short-term goals? What happened last week that's not like you? What triggered that? And just having those meaningful conversations. And this is something that we've been doing. Like the one-on-ones have been a thing since we started. The 40 minutes weekly of yoga will be new for our students. So it's just
dang, I
about
wanna do a whole 'nother one of these, and I just want to know more about your school, like how you do
oh yeah.
things, like how you made it, like what your approach is. You know Principal Ra?
No, I don't.
No, you don't know Principal Ra? What? Oh
Okay,
my
well,
god, I
DM
gotta
me on Twitter and
I
tell me
gotta
how
DM
y'all
you to know Principal Rock because he got his own school out in the Watts area of LA.
what's it called?
And it's called Pathways University,
Yep,
Change
I've heard of it.
Agents.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Their whole thing is like based around social justice. Like they have houses like the House of AOC, the House of Hustle, the House Mobama. So it just sounds, and like they have every week they have like full school, like kind of like pep rally type
Mhm.
things, and like their after school programming is crazy. And he just kind of like told me all about how he like mapped it out and all that. So like I wanna know more about that.
Yeah,
Um,
we can definitely do another one of these, talk all about that.
yeah, cool. So I mean, we are coming up almost to an hour here. Maybe you just want to give like a plug for. I know people have been asking about melanated. Is it's just melanated
Yeah,
has ed at the
melanated
end?
leaders.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay,
just
so
talk
I'll do
to us
that.
about that.
And then I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
So yeah, melanated leaders was inspired by what we've seen in other cities. So I'm part of a fellowship of people who started schools. I mean, it's just a long story, but one of those fellows was in another city, and she was like just in this group of just like leaders of color, school leaders of color, and they were like, these are people who make decisions. So I'm the executive director of my school. If I'm sitting with other CEOs or school leaders or executive directors, and they're saying like, yo, like, you know, what's up on such and such? I'm looking for a dean. Do you know anybody? And just having those like conversations, and but then also just being able to be our authentic selves without, you know, concern of judgment. So she brought that back here. And then my good friend Patrick like took the helm, and he's like, okay, we're going to start this. And he started, you know, at a Black owned spot. We had us some good fried fish and French fries and then some drinks. And he just brought these people of color together who are in the education space. And then from there, he just developed this amazing organization. You know, Penny, who's been on here commenting a lot, he tapped Penny and he tapped me and said, like, you know, like, join me on this effort and let's build something great. So he deemed me director of community. So and Penny's the director of capacity. We're currently looking for a director of candor, but that's what it's about: community capacity.
Oh, I like that.
And, you know, so let's love on each other. Let's be, you know, in a space together and learn how to trust each other. Because there's a lot of tension between the schools like mine that are, you know, like on the reform side, and then the traditional public schools. In this space, like Black leaders typically are only leading schools with Black kids. So, you know, so then there's this tension between the two types, the two approaches. And at the end of the day, we're all family and it's all love. So just bringing us together. And then that candor is like, we got to have conversations with one another. We have got to be able to say, like, you know, some things are looking shaky at your school, and you know, like, how can I support you? Because, you know, we got to get these test scores up. So that's about that candor. And then what capacity? Like, let's build you. Let's make you the best possible leader for these kids. And that's where the book study is coming in. That's part of the capacity work. Yeah. So that's melanated leaders.
Okay. And it's a shame too, like, when you talk about that tension, because honestly, when I was in school, and yeah, I went to a public school that was our district, I think it's something like, it depends on exactly what school you're in, but between, you know, 60-70% minority majority. So and then I went to boarding school for 3 years, which you know, I was recruited to go play sports up there. And total different world. I mean, you know, it's like all white people all of a sudden, and then there's like, you know, your few people of color or Black students. But those were like the things that I craved when I was in school. Like, just why does science and social study, like, why do these things all matter? Like, I want the connections, the relationships, the community building, the mental health, and like the conversations. So I guess like when a system works, you know, it works for a certain group of people, they kind of just want to double down on it. But really, I think that what we're moving towards is not like, you know, one thing that is good for one race or good for another race. It really is like better for everybody.
Right. Yeah. So I want to ask you, now that we're at the hour mark and about to close, like,
Yeah.
what would you say has been your greatest takeaway from this conversation? And then what had, like, based on what you've witnessed over the past few weeks specifically, what do you feel is like the next step for you in your own personal growth and being an ally?
Oh, okay. So I would say the thing that I've gotten in
Oh no, it's like a Teddy Riley moment. You froze.
the most more boom. Okay. I'm gonna start that sentence over again. So I think the thing that I've gotten the most clarity on from this conversation was just around the idea of like why seeing race is so important, and how seeing race is actually a way that we're going to deconstruct the systems that are based on race, and that when you don't do that, you look more at individual behaviors rather than the systems that are causing those behaviors. And I truly think that's something that I've like worked, but I just didn't necessarily have the language to express. So I'm feeling much more comfortable with that language and how to express it and why it's important. And where I'm going to go from here is I just want to actually like read books, I guess, that I've been kind of like hesitant to read because of other things that I've heard about them. Like I said, reading the anti-racist book. There's a whole list. The lists are all out there now. So just like reading more books and trying not to get so caught up on like the term, like, anti-racist or like there's a certain tinge when somebody says like you're racist. And kind of disconnecting those feelings with like, okay, the actual meaning under them. And just kind of like doing more like what we do with our students. Like we always talk about like how we want to meet our students where they are, and yet with adults we're just like and just want to like go at each other. But like just meet more people where they are and find out like what our common ground is. And I mean, I'd love to have another conversation with you about your school, like about more topics like this. And just, I mean, I think I've been doing that. I've been having conversations with people. So I just want to double down on that and make sure that the conversations that I'm having are not creeping around issues, but facing them head on.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I mean, for anybody who doesn't know, this is legitimately our first conversation ever. So
Yes.
there's like no problem. We're learning about each other as we had this conversation. So it's really cool. So yeah, like this is a good hour. I'm gonna go ahead and end this broadcast.
I hope you found this conversation insightful and helpful for unpacking a lot of these issues surrounding anti-racism, allyship, and a lot of the issues that have just really come into sharp focus over the past few weeks in our country. What I really took away from this is it's not about what you post on social media, it's about what you're doing right now and what you continue to do in the long term. I'm gonna continue having these conversations with other educators. Me and India are definitely gonna get up again and have more of these conversations, and I want to encourage you to do the same. The more we talk about it, the more we engage, the less we worry about how we're coming off on social media. That's when the real work happens. So don't hold back. Don't be worried about doing or saying the wrong thing or somebody reacting the wrong way. If you are truly putting your heart, your soul, your mind into doing the work, to creating that world that we all want to see, that's what matters. And I see you. And this is really what I mean by stay foolish, right? We got to do that hard work. We got to put it in. We got to be critical. But we also can't be overly critical that we're so afraid to mess up or to say the wrong thing. You got to be lighthearted. You got to be able to laugh at yourself and laugh with others. So that's what I mean by stay foolish, y'all.